She's back.
Oh, we are live now. Okay. Okay. Well, everyone, welcome. This is our very first live stream on LinkedIn. So thank you for your patience. My name is Annalee Kruger. I own Care Rights Incorporated. We work with families and corporations and financial advisors all across the country and help them understand aging, family caregiver burnout, dementia progression, and we do aging planning. It's all virtual, it's all remote, work with families, corporations, and financial planners. As most of you are probably impacted in some way with someone who is an aging loved one or a sick spouse, and it's impacting your career, your health, your finances, your portfolio, um, and everything in between, and your relationships. We're going to talk today about how caregiving and aging and dementia can absolutely derail your financial plan that your financial planner put in place if we don't use a collaborative team approach. So my guest today is Michael Komara, and he is a financial planner. Michael, why don't you take a minute to just do your bio and what you do?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Annalee, for having me on. I think this topic that we're addressing is so huge and so important. I was rereading your book yesterday and just taking a look at all of the things that people don't plan for that sometimes can be lurking down the road at somebody's financial situation. So that's where I try to step in and work with clients to prevent being surprised by some of these events that can have a dramatic impact on somebody's lifetime portfolio value. So, yeah, I've been in the financial planning, investment management business for certainly seen the impact of doing it right. And I've also seen the impact of not doing it right and people not doing the planning and then getting unpleasantly surprised by some things that really turn their world upside down. And so I feel a privilege to be able to work with people to raise their level of awareness around some of the things that can be. We don't know what might happen down the road, but we can prepare for some of the what ifs so that they don't derail us. And so that's where I find I can add some of the greatest value, having been in many conversations over the years, in seeing where somebody might be vulnerable in their finances. But we go beyond the financial. So I really think that good financial planning can help somebody minimize their not only their financial risk, but also their emotional risk, relational risk, because there's so many things that start to get impacted when some of these life events occur.
Right.
And wow, they can hit hard. And well.
Well, and let's talk specifics, right? So,
Yeah.
so let's talk specifics because with Care Right, who comes to me? It's always the adult son or daughter. They are basically mom and dad's assisted living. They're helping with meals, doctor's appointments, medication. They're acting like nurses and they're not comfortable with that because they're like, look, I'm a CEO. I'm not a nurse, and I have to go over on Saturdays to do mom's leg wound, her wound change, her bandage change, or they're leaving their work for weeks on end because they fly from New York to Arizona because dad had another stroke. All of that
Yeah.
costs money, right? Like when you have those emergency flights, airfare is not $69 on Frontier. It's like $1,000 or $1,200 at
Right.
a pop. So that is
Yeah.
like part of the financial impact. Or if you're the family caregiver, say you're a son or a daughter or a spouse, you don't take the job promotion because you're like, I don't have any more bandwidth to add more responsibility because I'm taking care of a sick spouse who has a stroke or cancer or MS or dementia, or an aging parent who has any of those conditions. And so we're seeing where family caregivers are declining job promotions. They're trying to navigate with their employer to take on more virtual work so that they can be wherever they need to be to take care of their loved one, but also not sacrifice their job. But another example is where, dementia. families are always, every single time, they're blindsided because they're like, oh, we thought that, we don't actually know what dementia means. The doctor gave us this diagnosis, and then it's kind of like, good luck to you. And so they're not realizing that in time, as that dementia progresses, whether it's Parkinson's or vascular dementia from like a stroke or any other type of dementia, they absolutely will need 24/7 care. That's just the nature of the beast. And with dementia, that can be a 3-decade long disease. And they absolutely will in time need more and more care, eventually 24/7. As you know, Medicare does not pay for this. So clients who want to age in place at home, which is all of them, they don't realize, and they get blindsided when the cost of care can be 40, 50, $60 an hour. And when they need 24/7 care, I have clients paying $30,000 and $40,000 per month per parent in 24/7 to be able to stay at home. And so all of those issues impact the financial plan. And then also when you've got little Ethel or Marie at home and they don't have enough supports in place, meaning they're in and out of the hospital, they're losing weight, they're getting more confused, or the family is getting burned out, or the family assumes that their parent is doing better at home than they really are, then they get blindsided by the actual cost of care, which is very expensive. So these are all things that impact the portfolio, and that's why I'm so glad you're willing to have this discussion today.
Well, I just think it's awesome what you're doing because I know I have felt it firsthand with my parents, but I see it all the time. All the focus and attention is on the person that's injured or having some form of dementia, and everybody forgets about the caregivers. And the caregivers are the ones that are being drained in so many different ways. It's you can they People start getting angry about that, right? The caregivers, right? It's not just, I mean, it's very real, especially if you have siblings and the caregiving falls to, for example, one of them or two of them, and the others they don't care, right? And so then there's the animosity that builds up, and it's, oh,
Well,
yeah,
part of it is because these are things I talk about literally every day. Is you're right. Caregiving falls on the shoulder of one or two of the adult kids, and they just kind of assume that their siblings are going to help out. And then to find out, oh, they aren't helping at all, or they're getting
yeah,
pushback from the siblings and saying, well, you've always over exaggerated everything. Dad is fine when I talk to him on the phone. And so that resentment snowball is what I call that. It starts out going like, hey, wait a minute, I'm in this by myself. And then as soon as
yeah,
more and more, because then it becomes the caregiver snowball where that son or daughter who's kind of got the brunt of everything, they can manage things until they can't, until their own
yeah,
career is impacted or their emotional, physical, or financial health is impacted. And then everybody is resentful of each other. 85% of my week is spent doing family meetings and family mediation because by the time
wow,
families come to me, they're burned out, they're angry, they're resentful, they don't understand the disease that their loved one has that they're trying to take care of. And I have zero idea how to navigate senior care options, how to pay for this. And then the other layer of complexity is they don't have their grab and go binder. They don't have any of these documents in order. They don't know accounts, passwords. They don't know who the financial advisor is. They don't know if their parents have long-term care insurance. All of that just adds up into one big icky mess if we don't have an aging plan. so and you see this
agree,
too with the families that you work with,
all the
everybody
time.
everybody knows someone in the aging journey. Everybody knows someone in the dementia journey. Everyone will find themselves as a caregiver at some point. So it's
Yeah,
time that we have to normalize talking about the what, not the what ifs, but the what whens of aging.
yeah. Yeah, that's so good. So you're spot on, I think, when you're, helping the caregivers. And then as you mentioned, sometimes there's the issues with the other siblings. And then the other part is that if the parent, for example, is still cognitively there, but does not want to cooperate with the adult child in this, so that creates a whole nother dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you hear a lot
Well,
about.
that's most of the case is the parents don't want to share any of this information. They don't want to engage in their own aging plan. Um, a lot of times. And so I have a whole process that I take families through to let's try to get mom and dad on board with developing their own aging plan and getting input from them. Otherwise, the adult kids are going to be forced into having to make all of these decisions for their parents if their parents don't want to engage in this whole process.
Yeah. And so that's where, like, one of the areas where I come into play is to try to, in the financial planning process, it's a lot of conversation, right? It's not, I think, really good, effective financial plans. Sure, there's the technical side of that, but more important, I think, it's having those conversations to raise the level of awareness of what could be, or as you say, not the what ifs, but the what whens. And so, while we don't know when something is going to occur, we can be prepared for that eventual scenario and how we're going to respond to it when it shows up. We don't know when, but at least we've thought it through and we've made provisions for it when those things occur. And
Exactly. Because, think about just real life stuff. Like, because families come to me in crisis mode. Like, nothing is going well. Like, people aren't calling me because things are going well. Like things tanked,
right.
like
Yeah.
things tanked and they tanked fast. And
Yeah.
so,
And
all the
hard.
people who had major strokes last Thursday didn't wake up thinking, oh, I think I'm going to have a major stroke today. And let's just stress test the family relationships and stress test everyone's careers and stress test
Hmm.
our financial plan. But guess what? Millions of people have heart attacks and strokes and falls or major car accidents or heart attacks or anything, anything in between. And so we have to plan for that. And I know people are like, ooh, I don't want to talk about it because that might trigger something to happen. No, don't be silly. Things are going to
Hmm.
happen no matter what. None
Yeah.
of us get healthier. None of us get more mobile. None of us get more independent. And none of us get more cognizant as we age. So we just need to face that fact and plan around for that if you want to decrease your exposure to risk.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've experienced it personally. So as you were just saying that last segment there, as you're talking about that, my mind quickly jumped to, the uncomfortableness of going to my father and saying, we need to talk about some of these estate planning types of things. And we got around to, for example, the advanced medical directives. I said, Dad, so if a situation should arise, and I'm not obviously wishing this upon you, but if this situation occurs, how do you want us to respond if you're just being kept alive by machines and so on and so forth, right? And I had that conversation with him, obviously not knowing 2 years later, that's exactly what I was faced with. And I'll tell you what, if I had not had those conversations with my dad and known what his desires were, I mean, it was hard enough as it was knowing what his desires were. But when the doctor comes to you and says, okay, basically he's staying alive on life support. So what do you want to do? Literally, I mean, it's the it's like you're kind of playing God at that moment. You're deciding when to take somebody's life or leave it. And not knowing what his desires were or would have been, I can't even imagine how I would have felt. It's really
Awful.
difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
awful.
awful. It's awful. And that,
Yeah.
that is not a position that adult kids want to be in. And adult kids who are already engaged in this caregiving and they're like, they can see the writing on the wall. They're in survival
Yeah.
mode, just trying to get through the day to make sure dad has what he needs and mom is at the doctor and all of this kind of stuff. Like it becomes a full-time job. But I can tell you, like, if you don't have these for switching over to like the document piece of it, if your parents don't have living wills and power of attorney and they don't have their grab and go binder, their insurance policies, their VA paperwork. Then when that crisis strikes, instead of being able to be like calm about it and be like, oh, here's the healthcare power of attorney, here's the long-term care insurance, here's all of this and here's all of that, they're spending
Yeah.
and wasting hours trying to now scramble to try to find the paperwork. And then luckily, if they can find it, great. But if they don't have it, if they can't put their fingertips on some of these advanced directives, then you get stuck either making these decisions or just as bad is your loved one ends up in guardianship court and conservatorship. And that's my I just had a family go through this because their parents didn't have any advanced directives in place, and it was $25,000 for them to put emergency guardianship and emergency conservatorship in place, court costs. And so,
Yeah.
these are things financial planners should be like very aware of too, to make sure that and I know that you do this with your clients, but like everything has to be buttoned up to reduce that financial exposure from a financial planner's kind of thought process of avoiding risk. But from a family perspective, if your parents and you, like all of us over the age of 18, should have all of our documents in order, all of our accounts, our passwords, our living wills, our power of attorney. I'm 53 years old, but 4 days after my 40th birthday, I was simply crossing the street, helping an 82-year-old gentleman across the street as pedestrians in Sheboygan, Wisconsin on May 3rd,
Hey.
2012. School bus driver was distracted by the kids on the bus. She blew through a four-corner stop. She didn't apply the brakes until she saw my face break the headlight of a school bus. I flew
Oh,
15 feet. Like, I didn't wake up that morning thinking, oh, I'm going to get run over by a school bus, but I did. But I practice what I preach. I carry my living will and I carry my healthcare power of attorney. But I think, one of the other things, and then I'll let you talk about your book. But, we have to normalize these conversations and not feel so uncomfortable about it. But that's what I do for families is I normalize these conversations and facilitate the family meetings. And it can't be a one and done conversation. Like every year I have a family meeting with my power of attorneys and say, look, just make sure that I'm a do not resuscitate. Like I have a 2-page addendum of like if I lose capacity, these are so they don't have to make any like thought out decisions. We go through this so it becomes muscle memory. So they're like, okay, Annalee does not want a feeding tube at all. She doesn't want a ventilator. She doesn't want a respirator. So it becomes muscle memory, and we need to normalize these conversations. So
mhm.
I know
So
that
good.
I know that you wrote a book. I wanted to give you the last few minutes to talk about your book. You're an author, I'm an author. Tell me about your book. It's called Life in the Balance. Tell us a point or two about your book.
Thank you for teeing that up. Can I say one other thing about the planning aspect and then jump into that? So um, I want to hitchhike on something you said. Our financial plans are comprehensive in nature, and we go dive deep into like estate analysis, tax analysis, insurance analysis, all those things. I'll give you one example. Like in the estate analysis side, we want to make sure, okay, are there these advanced directives in place? Are the accounts titled correctly? Are the beneficiary designations up to date in the way that you want them to? Is the person serving as your executor or trustee, are they still the ones that you trust? And all these things that go into playing that. Once we have our client's information entered into our financial planning software, we create a private portal for them that they only have access to, and they can see everything, and we can model any what if or what when situation for them and the impact that would have. Thing I'll say about that includes a private vault that we store all of the documents in there so that whoever has access to it, everything is in there. One click and they can open it up and it's all there and so on. So that's it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's awesome.
Regarding the book.
Let
Yeah.
me just say why that is so important, because when you find out that when you get that crisis call, like, do you know, are you the son of XYZ? And you're like, yeah. Well, we have him in our ER and he's not coherent and we need to know what to do with him, because that's kind of how those calls go. And we need a copy of that power of attorney right now. Then they can
Yeah.
simply log into their portal with
Yep.
you and
Yep.
grab that and send it on
Yep.
to the hospital, because it's unlikely that that family caregiver, that son or daughter, just
Mhm.
has that at their fingertips, right? And so
Right.
the one downside is when parents do get them, they don't tell their kids, hey, I got a power of attorney and I named you as my decision maker. And they also don't give the kids a copy or tell the kids where it is. Well, if your
Yep.
parents live in Austin, Texas, but you live in
Exactly.
Rochester, New York, it doesn't do
Yeah.
much good. Like you have to fly to get down
Yeah.
to Texas to find
Yeah.
wherever this green folder is that mom always talked about. And
Yeah.
then so get there, then get to the hospital. A lot of time lapses, and sometimes with these medical crises, you don't have time to waste. So it's all about emergency
Yeah.
preparedness. So, so
It's
your book.
yeah.
Tell us a couple things
Yeah.
about your book.
Yeah, so the book, I didn't set out one day sit and think to myself, oh, it'd be wonderful to write a book. I never had that thought, right? But it came as a result of literally hundreds of conversations with successful people over the years. And what I learned is that somebody can be, quote, successful in one dimension of their life,
Yeah.
but if they continue to avoid or neglect some of these other important areas, it's just a matter of time before the cracks start to surface in people's life. And sometimes those cracks are in a person's health. Sometimes those cracks are in relationships with siblings or with business partners or in a lot of other ways. And so, working with these people who, from all appearances, are enormously successful, but then you start having conversations with them and you discover, wow, there's a lot of pain that's going on in this person's life behind the scenes. And so it was my humble attempt to raise the awareness around what I believe are these 7 areas that are absolutely essential in everybody's life in order for them to experience a great life, however they define that, and everybody defines it differently. But I think these 7 are really key, and it's up to each of us to figure out how to integrate these 7 areas into our life in healthy and meaningful ways. And it's going to be different for everybody on the planet. So that's basically the idea behind the book, and I've tried to give people, a lot of ideas on not only why these things are important, but how to develop them more in their life.
What as we kind of wrap up the
Excuse me. Yeah.
podcast here, I know there's 7 elements or 7 pillars in your book, but what might one or two of them be that could be really impactful in case someone's like, "Hey, I want to check this book out." What are a couple of the pillars?
I just did a talk on this a couple of weeks ago, and there are a couple of areas that really I could tell were resonating strongly with people. And it's interesting, out of the 7, it happens to be related to this topic. One of the 7 F's, they all start with the letter F for simplicity, the 7 areas, but one of them is fitness. And when people hear the word fitness, they automatically think of just physical fitness. And I think they're missing the boat on that. That I believe true fitness is 4-dimensional. And it includes, yes, our physical fitness, but also our emotional fitness, our intellectual fitness, and our spiritual fitness. So I think to be fit, here's my simple definition of what it truly means to be fit. It means you are able. You are able to respond in whatever situation life should throw at you in a way that allows you to respond effectively and without wrecking your life and so on. So fitness is way beyond dropping some pounds or lifting some weights. I think it's way beyond fitness. True fitness is beyond that. So,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
so that's one. Obviously, finance is a big one. What I find is people are not taking advantage of all the different techniques, legal techniques to lower their taxes and grow their wealth and so on and minimize risk. So there's a lot that I do around that in terms of just how does somebody go about growing their wealth, and it's primarily building assets and protecting assets, and there's things to do alongside those. And another one that's really large, it's the very first one in the book, it's fun. I'm
Yeah.
finding there's people are so serious. There's so many things going on in life that stress people out. When I started researching the importance and the impact of humor and laughter on our physical bodies, our emotional self, our psychological self, and so on, I was blown away that how we can extend our life. The University of Chicago has said that a good sense of humor they've done the research on this,
They
can
have, yeah.
extend somebody's life by 8 years.
Yeah.
8 years by
Yeah.
having, I mean, it's amazing. So it's those kinds of things that I've incorporated into the book.
Well, that's fantastic. It's definitely a must read. I'm guessing they can get, I know they can get, oh, well, there's no guessing. I know that you can get this book on Amazon. Um,
Yeah, but I'd like to give who's ever listening a free copy. If they go to my website, komaracap.com, and just go to the upper bar where it says "Let's Talk." All you got to do is just put in there, "I'd like to receive a free copy of your book," and I'll send one out.
Oh, that's perfect. So Komara.
And then CAP, short for capital,
Yep.
comeracap.com. Yep.
Komaracap.com for those who want a free book. This was fantastic. I'm so glad we got this. I'm so glad we got this figured out. Thank you for being my guinea pig on this.
My pleasure.
You're a good sport.
My pleasure. I really think you're doing important work.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
I appreciate that so much because it is important work, and there's no reason for these families to feel so overwhelmed and to get burned out and make bad decisions with care because they don't know that there's someone like me that exists and someone like you to help
Exactly.
manage their financial plan. So this was fantastic. So glad that you were able to participate today, Michael. Thank you so much again for taking your time and sharing your expertise and sharing about your book as well.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And anytime I can be a resource to you, glad to.